Hello, lacrosse friends, and welcome to Inside the World of Box Lacrosse. We're starting a little later than usual this week. There's a lot going on for everybody. Adam has plumbers in the house. The downstairs neighbors have been getting some water dripping into their flat, and that's no cool. That's not cool. Greg, our fearless leader, is off. He had forgotten that he has his annual haircut scheduled for a little bit from now. And we're not joking about that. He does get his haircut once a year about now. It's just getting warm. So he will look great next week. But for now, we have Charity Beecher, his better half, running the show. Welcome aboard, Charity. Great to have you a little bit more front-facing this week. You're always in the background doing things, making the show great. And I published my Stampers Musings about 9 minutes ago. I got caught up. Sometimes, Adam, I get going on stories. You know this for yourself, the way it goes.
Yeah.
I get rolling. I was working on the musings yesterday. Had a bit of a rough mental health day yesterday, so wound up just not really doing a whole lot that the world would see. So today I got going on them, and I had a couple of I have quick sticks at the end of the musings. I had a couple items that started as quick sticks, quickly became, that's too much for a quick stick at the end. They're just brief little things. Became items on their own. Then they became too much really to include in this column that was getting long already. So they became actually items for the next 2 weeks of musings that I've got scheduled, and I'm planning and the whole thing. And it's been a little bit crazy on that end. So but here we are on ITWOBL. Thank you, everyone who's with us, for being patient, for being with us. We really appreciate the support, and we're excited to have a great show. And Adam, you're going to start things off by taking us through some highlights, I believe, of last week's games.
Yeah, I mean, for me, and I'm sure that you're on this boat, Stamper, as well, and I'll definitely want your insight. But looking at Randy Stotts' highlights for the Halifax Thunderbirds, I mean, he was excellent in this game. Really, the pivotal moving force, especially in the beginning of this game for the Halifax Thunderbirds. I mean, we just saw such a versatility of his skill set in this one, and it almost seemed like he was on another gear sometimes compared to that San Diego Seals defense. If we're looking now at the highlights, we see here it's things are breaking out in transition, and what I loved about this play here is just in motion, grabs the ball in stride, finishes it, pots it right in the position. And, I think that this game, and he had 4 goals in this game, we saw differences in how he was able to finish, but also it's not often that he gets 4 goals in a game. So, for him, it was amazing to see that. And again, you could see his speed.
I love the celebration over there at the boards. I don't think that's his kid. I think that's just a young fan. I'm sure his family is there often, and may have been there on this game as well. But I'm not sure that they sit in that front row right by the glass. But it's so cool. Randy Stotts, I think, is a great player in so many ways. And one of the things, I mean, he had 2 years of junior lacrosse that he missed with catastrophic knee injuries that he had to come back from, and which made him, that's why he was picked 6th overall in the 2015 draft, right? I mean, he was right up there with Lyle Thompson and Graham Hossick in contention for the first pick, but those knee injuries, I think, were enough to bump him down because the others didn't have those concerns. And then he missed another entire season in his pro career after suffering a knee injury in the PLL season, or before the PLL season. So it's remarkable that he is still looking so agile and doing such a great job with those 3 major knee injuries. And I'll let you get back to the highlights, but one other thing with Randy Stotts, I find he is a guy that you get to a rink, you're down on the floor, walking around before the game, talking to people, getting all set for whatever you're doing, and you see Randy, and he'll be sitting there at the bench or standing wherever he is, and you pick up a conversation with him like it's like you were just talking a few minutes ago, and you might not have talked to him for a year or something.
Right.
And you just pick it up, and he's very eloquent and very personable, and such a student of the game of lacrosse, and such a fan of the game, and just such a great guy to have conversations with. And it really makes it difficult not to cheer for him with everything he's overcome and what a good guy he is.
Yeah, he's definitely one of those players that is always, so friendly, brings the family often, especially during those summer games. It's a huge family affair for the Stottses, and it's awesome to see him having the success that he is. You brilliantly outlined kind of, the challenges he's faced, but he's having a career year. Now he's got a career high in assists, and he's still got 2 games left to play.
Wow. That's amazing because he's had some great seasons. And it's funny, it brings up another player, and not to get too distracted, but Curtis Dixon is one of those stories that started as a quick stick, became a bit more, and now is going to be a feature next week in my musings, because he is 1 assist away with 2 goals to play from his career high in assists. He is also, in his incredible career, right? He has been such a great player. He is about to have his 4th 100-point season. And this year, right now, he's in 8th in the league in scoring. This could be the first time he's in the top 10 in scoring in the league since 2018.
Oh, there is
2019. I just honestly go to my musings, which were posted again like now 15 minutes ago. It's mentioned in there in the quick sticks. But what a season for Dixon and Stott, a couple of the veteran righties who have just kept doing it.
Dixon would also be the 4th oldest player to hit 50 goals if he can reach that. And so I think, the way he's
playing. He need 7?
Yeah. So might not get there, but, I think just to be in that conversation.
6 goals in a game in his career. Yeah. It's a lot. It's like 10
times. Yeah. And it's amazing if you think about the guys that have done it, the other 3. I mean, you're talking about the most elite of elite company. You're talking about John Grant Jr., John Tavares, and Gary Gait. I mean, that is the Mount Rushmore of forwards in the National Lacrosse League.
With the 4th face pending.
Yeah. But yeah, if we get back to the highlights here, kind of going to the first here, talked about the great first half that Stotts had. I mean, this play to me was brilliant. To fight for that loose ball on the boards amongst 2 Seals defenders. I mean, look at this. He's getting swarmed there, finds his way out, splits those guys, finds the cutter in the middle. I mean, what precision, what focus. I mean, it almost looks, actually, if you look at it there at a quick little glance, it almost looks like a kind of a no-look pass. Yeah. It didn't look like he was fully looking at Hogarth there, which really just incredible vision from Stotts. I mean, this was, I think, one of his best plays of the game.
It is. I mean, that's just an amazing play to fight through. It's interesting because Hogarth actually made the top 5 plays of the week for the NLL with a different goal in this game where he battled through 3 defenders, went to the net and scored with 1 hand. Amazing play that should be probably higher on the top 5, but this is a great play by Randy Stotts. And it's actually kind of funny because one of the other things in my musings, and I'm a little fixated because I just finished them, but I looked at the top 5 plays this week. Number 1 is the Matt Vince goalie goal. Yeah. Great. Love the Matt Vince goalie goal. It's a really nice shot. First time in 16 years he scored a goal. That's really cool. But go back and watch the Thomas Hogarth play. Oh, it's that shouldn't be above it. And the one that I think is number 1, Braden Maillet on the pass from Jesse King goes to the net. He makes the catch. He spins. 1 foot is leaving the ground as he makes the catch, and it's unbelievable. I think to me that's the play of the week. But Stotts could be in here for this, the previous one as well. And then this is one more beauty that he adds that you're going to take us through.
But I do want to kind of piggyback off that because, you mentioned that Hogarth goal. Dawson Feed had some big body goals where he was leaving his feet. Like, this was the kind of gritty, creative offensive effort, this shared team effort from the Halifax Thunderbirds that shows how potent they can be. And it was really just, it's one thing to be talented, but if you're giving 100% effort and, out battling your opponent all over the floor, you're going to win most times. And they really did show that they were deserving of the win, especially after that kind of lull for everyone else other than Stotts. And I'll add Clark Peterson in the first half. But for everyone else to get on board in the second half. And also just a quick shout out to Drew Hutchison, who's been so good filling in for Warren Hill when Warren Hill does not have his best game. But yes, in this final goal here, was another example. We're talking about his quickness, Stotts' quickness, and other things. And, I think what I loved about this play is you've got a defender on him, and here he is. He gets the ball, and instead he sees an opportunity, he has to stop, a little bit of a stutter step, and instead of passing it off, he's patient. He waits for a moment, sees that he has a little bit of a window right there, the defender closing in, but right before that happens, gets the shot off. And I think that, realizing that, there was that extra opportunity after the initial push, after the initial drive, I think, was just another example of how great he was in this game.
Yeah, really. I mean, excellent points. And wow, Randy Stotts Appreciation Society here this week, and good for him. And shall we take a look at the rest of the games?
Let's do it.
We have the board. Okay. So I'm not sure that we have the board handy. Again, Greg is about 14 minutes from haircut time. So things are a little bit different, but let's take a look at the games of this past week, because it was really something this week in the National Lacrosse League. And we started off the week with the Friday games. Obviously, a couple of very impressive goaltending performances from two of the best goalies, two goalies of the year over the last couple of seasons, in Christian Del Bianco in Vancouver, amazing against Albany, and Nick Rose, his best game with Calgary as they beat Saskatchewan.
And one of the best games he's had in his career. I mean, it was interesting. I believe I said it here last week that, Calgary is in a position, or was in a position coming into the past game, where it's like, okay, if things don't work out with the Nick Rose trade, that kind of looks like Calgary ends up losing that trade. I mean, they get Tyler Hendricks, but to give away a top draft pick for Nick Rose as well as Robert Hudson, if they weren't even going to make the playoffs, so they had lost that game, that would have been huge. And so Nick Rose showing his value, proving his worth, and now Calgary is in a position fighting again. And we'll talk about Calgary in the next section. But yeah, they are right in the thick of this playoff hunt, which is really exciting. And that's all thanks to Nick Rose.
Yeah, and thanks for getting the results board up there. Well done, Charity. And it's interesting because Calgary is just outside the playoffs right now, but they're in that mass of teams that are fighting for it. Things can shift. Go to Graham Parrow's site, NLLstats.com. Go to the Could Happen, and you can sit there and play and see how many different possibilities there are. Although it looks definitely like Rochester and Vancouver are pretty much battling for that. Halifax is in a really good spot to get a home playoff game, and Rochester and Vancouver, both by winning their last games, can put themselves in a really good chance to also host a game. We're going to get more into that again in the next segment. Rochester with a big win. We've talked about Halifax over San Diego. How about that Philadelphia-Georgia game, Adam?
Yeah, I mean, that to me, it was one of those wins where it was like, where has that Wings team been?
Yeah.
The fight
in the first half of the season, right?
Yeah. The fight in this team, and I had tweeted about it, but Mitch Jones, that fight in the beginning to defend Brennan O'Neill. Mitch Jones is not a fighter by any means. I know he has been in a couple throughout his senior B, junior, and senior A career, and I think he had two other fights in his NLL career. But for him to stand up for Brennan, I think that showed you how everything was on the table for Philadelphia. And I think that it all goes back to, there was the moment where Blaze Reardon was diving. This was, I think, in the fourth quarter, and Philly was down. They were making their comeback. Actually, I think it was the goal that tied the game, and it was challenged. And you could see the tenseness on the bench. Blaze was like, "Oh my God, is this going to be against us?" And as soon as it was called a good goal, the way that bench erupted in joy and excitement, and then they rallied off. What was it, 5 goals in a row, and pulled away? I mean,
That's a great point.
Yeah.
That's a great point because it really was. And it was a long review because it was a tough call. And you could just see on the bench, Blaze Reardon and the wings thinking, everything's been going against us lately. Of course, this is not going to count. And then when it did count, when it was proved to be a good goal, and I believe, if I recall correctly, isn't that the one where the official said, on review, we have enough evidence to show it's conclusive?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
I love that because it's like, it wasn't questionable. They said, yeah, this is a good goal. And what an announcement, what a goal, and what a moment for the Wings. And they rode that.
Yeah, and it's a tough one for Georgia, and we've talked about it, on this program all season long, and we've talked about it and written about it in the past. The consistency of Georgia is just, it's what's been getting in their way the past few years, and this was an example, and especially at the end when they needed it the most, to hold in there and really make sure that they could have a playoff position. Now they're at risk depending on how the season folds out. Or pans out, I should say, that, now they might not be in the playoffs, depending on what happens the next couple of games.
Yeah, it's right there for them. They're sitting. I started, doing some of the could happen on Graham's site, and I was a little surprised when Georgia started popping up in the out of the playoffs positions, right? But it could happen quite easily. Buffalo and Colorado, I think, kind of the game encompasses the story of these teams. As Buffalo found a way to win late, Colorado was right there, really battled, but no Robert Hope for them this week, and also, of course, Eli McLaughlin and Zed Williams gone for the season. It's
because they know they can turn it on in the second half, as we saw against Colorado, or what is it? Because slow starts have been a trend for the Bandits, but more often than not, they have come out of it, and this was a great example. And to do it on the road against a Colorado team that really was pushing very hard to try and get this win, it just overcome by that lethal Bandits offense, and they're always attacking you. They can stop you in any which way. Matt Vince again, when he needed to, stepped up to the plate. And how many times are we going to say that? Yeah. It's just so typical. But yeah, what a win for the Bandits.
That is a dangerous habit to get into, though. Thinking you can turn it on, flip the switch when you need to, because at some point it just is not going to happen.
Especially during the postseason.
Exactly. So the final game of the week was Sunday, and it turned into quite a thriller. The overtime win with Jack Hanna potting a beauty. Jack Hanna is really having himself a season.
Yeah.
The silver lining for the Rock, as I believe I pointed out on Twitter, losing this game actually gives them a really good chance to have the top 2 picks now in the draft this fall. And as it sits right now, they have their pick, Vegas' pick, and Philly's pick. Well, they have those regardless, but as it sits now, those are the first 3 picks in the draft. And boy, they could really. That's another topic that I'm getting into in a couple of weeks, is how the next stretch is looking for the teams that don't make the playoffs, and that does include Vegas. It probably includes Toronto and Philadelphia as well. Almost every scenario sees them out. So, but what a game that turned out to be.
Yeah. And Jack Hanna, you're right. I mean, this guy is unbelievable. I love the way he plays. And also, you're seeing those new pieces. You're seeing the youth kind of really step up for them. For me, when I'm looking at Jackson Webster, another big game, Quatra and his return, 6 points. It was really great to see Jonathan Donville doing what he does. I mean, it was a great effort by them. And I think that, the future, I think, is going to be brighter for Las Vegas. They've made some changes. They've got some key pieces here. I think that they're going to keep building. The crowd is still there. They're still loving what they're seeing coming out in very large numbers for that smaller barn. So I do have hopes for a bright future for Las Vegas.
I'm very curious what their strategy is going forward in net, because you've got Landon Kells. I'm a huge fan. I mean, I've always been a fan. I still think he has the potential to be a strong franchise goalie.
Yeah.
But after 3 seasons, and the numbers are not getting better
Right.
for the Las Vegas Desert Dogs. They've got their worst goal differential. They've given up a ton of goals. They're scoring some more, but this is their worst season statistically at this point in their 3 years, right? Which is not great for an expansion team to be heading that direction. You've got Justin Getty, who's kind of been in and out. Is Landon Kells the guy? I would love to have him on my roster as a backup, ready to develop. I still think in a few years he's going to be a solid starting goalie. But right now, can you keep riding him?
Yeah, it's tough love, and I think you're totally valid in bringing up that point. And so I guess as a follow up to that, Stamper, does that mean that you would be starting Getty, or do you find a goalie elsewhere?
Well, that's the $64,000 question, right? Like, is Getty a starter? I know he thinks he is. You need a goalie to believe that, but is he a guy that you can ride to higher levels? I don't know. I mean, they're two young goalies, but if you're going to go get one somewhere else, where do you get one? I don't see Vegas getting a goalie in the draft this year that's their guy. And I'll tell you, goalies are not readily available. There are not a lot of great backups. That's a huge point in my column this week. Is Riley Hutchcraft has done a great job for Rochester as the backup, but where do you go to get a goalie? Teams aren't parting with their starters easily.
Yeah,
I don't know. Can you get do you try a Cam McLeod or an Aiden Walsh, try and get one of them?
yeah.
But then you're the same situation, like a young guy who hasn't quite established himself yet.
Yeah, and it's interesting. That is a good point, and I know that Riley is getting a little bit older, especially than those two guys you just mentioned in Walsh and Cloud. But and if I'm remembering the trade correctly, wasn't Riley Hutchcraft part of the initial deal? So to see him in a Las Vegas Desert Dogs uniform, would be very interesting. Not saying that's going to happen, but just
he was. Sorry, go ahead. He was part of the expansion draft, right?
Yeah.
They took him, and then he went with Connor Fields.
Yes.
What a trade for Rochester, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a whole nother episode in the saga of the Desert Dogs so far, is that trade and some others. So we should probably wrap up this segment. What do we have coming up next, Adam?
So we are going to have a really cool section looking at which home playoff teams that could be hosting a home playoff game are the most dangerous, and which road teams that are going to be sneaking into the playoffs are the most dangerous. As we see in this league, there is so much parity, so it's going to be great to break that down in the next section.
We'll see you in just a minute.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Inside the World of Box Lacrosse, or ITWOBL. It is very well known as. I'm Adam Levy, Steven Stampier, and Charity Beecher filling in for Greg Beecher, who is getting his annual haircut. I feel we're going to bring that up quite a lot on this show, but very happy to be here for this section. As we alluded to in the previous section, we are going to be talking about who Stamper and I feel are some of the most dangerous home playoff teams that can host a home playoff game, and teams that can be on the road and challenge those home teams. So, I think starting off, Stamper, and if I may, starting with my pick for the road team, one of those 7 or 8 seeds that are sneaking in, that I think is the most dangerous, I would have to say that if the Calgary Roughnecks can sneak into the postseason, I think that we have to be thinking about them as one of those most dangerous teams. And all you have to do is not only look at this past weekend going into Saskatchewan and beating the Rush, but having a couple weeks ago gone into Buffalo and beaten the Bandits, and then earlier in the year been in Vancouver and beat the Warriors, and even defeated the Halifax Thunderbirds in Halifax. We're literally talking about all of the teams that are looking like they'll be hosting a home playoff game, and they've already won in their barns. So, when they're on, and I think that they could be a very dangerous opponent coming in to another barn.
Yeah, pretty tough to argue, right? I mean, they've beaten all the teams that could, or almost all the teams that could be hosting games, certainly the teams that look like they have a very good shot at hosting games, and including the 2 teams that have clinched home games and are the most likely, right? I mean, Calgary's probably going to be 7 or 8 if they get into the playoffs. I don't necessarily see an avenue for them to get higher than that, which means those wins over Saskatchewan and Buffalo are particularly relevant and recent. So, yeah, I mean, Nick Rose playing like Nick Rose, the reigning goalie of the year and our IL Indoor MVP last season. I mean, I don't know that anybody feels comfortable playing Calgary, even at home, in that first round, the one and done of the playoffs, especially when you look at Saskatchewan and Buffalo. They're both 3-3 in the last 6 games.
Mm-hmm.
They're obviously, they're confident, they believe in themselves, but they're vulnerable. I mean, they're not unbeatable.
Yeah, I mean, I do have to say that, not to beat a dead horse, as they say, but since I called the Bandits unfun for the way that they were running away with things, boy oh boy, does it really feel like there are so many teams in contention now to really make a push for the NLL Cup, and even some surprises that could really shake things up. So it has been a very fun second half of the season.
Yeah, speaking of fun, how about the run that the Rochester Nighthawks are on? I would go with Calgary if I was allowed to pick the same team, but we made it quite clear we each have to pick different teams. So um, so you took the low hanging fruit. I'll take the slightly higher hanging fruit that you have to climb a little for. Rochester right now is
Yeah.
in fourth place, so they would be playing host to a playoff game, but they do not control their own destiny. This is actually a big part of my story this week. My musings that just dropped today are the Rochester Nighthawks a legitimate top 4 team in the league?
Mhm.
They've won 6 straight games, 8 of 10. They've outscored their opponent something like 80-44, 80-48 in these last 6 games. They
Mhm.
have been on fire. Connor Fields, Ryan Lansbury, Ryan Smith, Thomas McCombie, all 4 of them in the top 22 in the league in scoring. I mean, they are dynamite. Ryland Hartley's been playing great. They have, I would say, probably the best, or at least arguably the best backup goalie in the league right now, as we've
Yeah.
talked about. They have a lot going on for them. But even if they win their final game
Mhm.
against Toronto, if Vancouver wins their final 2 games, they move ahead of Rochester and
Right.
would take 4th place and would wind up hosting the Nighthawks in a playoff game. And Rochester has a better record on the road than they do at home.
Yeah.
So they could be very dangerous. I mean, they could be a bit of a wounded animal going into the playoffs. If they win their last game, they've won 7 in a row, and they
Mhm.
still get bumped down to a
Yeah.
road game. They could have a huge chip on their shoulder, really want to go improve something. Connor Fields has been fantastic. Ryan Lansbury, the arguably the biggest breakout player of the season. After he was a huge breakout player last year, I think Rochester, as much as I argue in the story, I put both arguments forward in my
Mhm.
musings. I say, yeah, Rochester, they're doing great. The hottest team in the league. They also are 3-7 against teams currently in playoff positions, including 1-5 against the 3 teams that are ahead of them in the standings right now. So I think you might have to pump the brakes a bit if you want to say Rochester's an elite team or in that elite group. I think they need to prove it in the playoffs. On the other hand, they're in their 5th year of existence as an expansion team. 5th or 6th. It's their 3rd straight playoff berth that they've clinched. They're doing a great job. Dan Carey has really built a club that can compete, and I think they're a terrifying team to have coming into your home barn in the first round of the playoffs.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I think that they missed Rylan Reese this past game due to
Mhm.
injury. We don't know the full extent of his status yet. I know that they said week to week the team, and they're going to kind of judge that. The week off is going to help, but then knowing and I think that this weekend will tell us a lot. But if Vancouver, if there's like, okay, we'll take the 5 seed. No, we can maybe go into Vancouver and challenge them there because we've been good on the road. Let Rylan Reese have another week to rest. He gets to go back to his roots in BC, play in front of that home crowd after not being on the floor for a couple of weeks. That could be another motivator for them. That could be a very exciting game. And nothing against Rochester hosting a home playoff game, but I've talked about it with Nikki that if Vancouver is going to host a home playoff game in the first round, I am making the trip from New York City.
Nice.
I have spent too much time covering the Warriors, especially in the earliest parts of my career, which were some very dark times in Vancouver, that I need to be there just for my own mental health and to see this story play out fully. So, a Vancouver home game in the first playoff game would be very special.
Wow, that is a perfect segue into the other half of this equation. Who is a dangerous potential home playoff team in these playoffs? And my team is the Vancouver Warriors,
Mm-hmm.
because they are playing. I mean, obviously they're playing great. 4 straight wins with Christian Del Bianco. His best game of the stretch against Albany, who actually played a pretty good game, had some chances, had a lot of trouble managing the ball, just possessing the ball. It
Mm-hmm.
seemed like the ball was just popping out of their sticks all night. They're having trouble picking it up, but they still put together an effort that gave them a chance. And Del Bianco was sensational. There's a reason they went and got him, even though Aiden Walsh was playing pretty well for them, and it's because he's Christian Del Bianco. He's the 2019 playoff champion, where he could have easily won the playoff MVP. I believe Dane Dobie, when he was handed the MVP trophy, actually said, "No, this is Del's," and handed it to Del Bianco. Good on Dane Dobie, because Dobie was great, but Del Bianco, I think we all feel, was probably the key difference maker there. So I think Vancouver's a scary team, especially now that they're consistently getting 10,000 plus in that arena. And you can see the excitement building. The numbers have built. They actually got pretty decent numbers a couple years ago and last year, getting 7,000, 8,000 in there, but they have built, and they had some 10,000, 11,000 plus games in terms of fans last year as well. But they have really built to a steady core fan base who's very excited about what's going on, and will be super pumped if they get to host a home game and then become a road team probably in the semis and finals if they make it.
Yeah, and a little bit of a segue. Just finishing up my article for Inside Lacrosse this week on kind of what it's been like for the Vancouver Warriors, specifically talking to Matt Beers, who has been with that franchise other than the 2 years in Saskatchewan since 2010, the last time this franchise won a championship in Washington. Kind of about those dark times and how they got through it. And I have to say, he was very open and honest about some of how they dealt with things. Some really good references to some key points that Chris Hall made when he was the head coach of the Washington Stealth. So that story, you'll want to see that on IL Indoor. That's going to be a great one.
I know, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, no, what's happening in Vancouver, we need bigger markets like Vancouver to be successful. And what Jason Thorne, the VP of operations, is doing there is great. He, just like with John Catalano and Scott Loeffler, they're really building something special in these markets. And we're seeing some great stuff happen now, which is just incredible to see. Actually kind of transitioning, I kind of segued into my own team there, because for me, while Vancouver, I think, is the most lethal team, they look like they could challenge anyone right now. I would also say that another team, especially at home, the Halifax Thunderbirds, are so good right now. 10-3 in their last 13 games. They just had a huge win, their last home game against Saskatchewan. But I want to reference a tweet it was back on February 21st. Stephen Keogh had tweeted out that if the Halifax Thunderbirds can host a home playoff game, that they will win, in his opinion, the NLL Cup this season. That just shows how much faith he has in that Halifax market, which he's played in and he knows so well. And, obviously I think that would just be huge for the city of Halifax to be able to do that. But right now they kind of look, as I was just mentioning, how unfun it was in the beginning, how fun it is now, because it looks like Vancouver, Halifax, Buffalo, Saskatchewan. We just don't know which one of these teams is going to go on a deep run. But Halifax, for me, especially because they just had their largest crowd in franchise history in Halifax, because they were doing standing room seats as well. And so, to have 10,798 people in attendance, that just shows that there is a growing interest in wanting to be in that barn and celebrating what that team is doing.
And it gets raucous, especially, some of those, you get, they love their transition. You get like a Colton Armstrong goal where he just races the length of the floor and puts one in, something like that. Ryan Tarafanko, they've got so many aspects of their game that really get the crowd fired up, and that is an electric atmosphere. Stephen Keogh was a little biased, obviously, having played for the club. I'm not sure I'm quite ready to crown them the NLL Cup champions if they do get a home game, but I'll tell you, they're certainly on the short list of teams that are strong contenders for it this season, and that should be really something.
And I'll also just quickly plug my latest episode of the Lacrosse Matrix podcast, episode number 99, with the Halifax Thunderbirds' Cody Jamieson. And I actually talked to him and I asked him a very interesting question, because he'll be biased, and he admitted that he's biased, but he knows what it's like to play in the nest. But I wanted to know from him, having been in this league for 15 seasons, he's played in Bandit Land, he's played in the Loud House in Colorado, what makes the nest different than those other barns that have been so electric over the years. And, he mentioned it's the intimacy, is that when your limit is about 10,000, 11,000 people, and that's how small the arena is compared to a big arena like Ball Arena or the KeyBank Center in Buffalo, that noise gets amplified to a next level. You can hear, you can't hear anything. It is just so loud and electric in there. And you can even feel it. It's palpable on the broadcast, just how loud it is in there.
That's a great point. The difference between, say, like a crowd of 6,000 in a 6,000 seat arena versus a crowd of 12,000 in a 17 or 18,000 seat arena, that smaller crowd sometimes can be even more of a factor, I think, in that. So that's pretty interesting. As episode 99, excellent. I mean, Cody Jamieson, great guest. He's obviously such a knowledgeable lacrosse guy. Shouldn't you have had Wayne Gretzky for episode 99?
I'm not sure I would be hosting Wayne Gretzky on my podcast these days.
I'll hook you up. I haven't had him on mine either yet, but we got connections. He's I
would love to say that, it was the way that he handled Alex Ovechkin, passing him for the all-time goals in NHL history. Very classy, great for him to be there, great for him to be so humble about it. Wayne, such a competitive guy. He gave his heart and soul, not only for his team, but with the country behind him. And so, it was great to see that, and congratulations to Alex on his achievement.
Yeah, absolutely. And the dive celebration, that was pretty cool for Ovechkin. And I did enjoy Gretzky saying, "Don't hug me, you stink," in the locker room after. Yeah. But Wayne Gretzky is, of course, part owner of the Las Vegas Desert Dogs with Joe Tsai, who is co-owner of Inside Lacrosse. So, we've got connections. It hasn't borne fruit yet, but I haven't really pushed it. Maybe we can get Gretz on here to talk about, I guess not the playoffs.
Well, he has talked a lot about lacrosse and box lacrosse in particular when he's on those NHL broadcasts, which is great for the sport. He's talked about his history in lacrosse, which is phenomenal. And the more people of his prominence that we get talking about lacrosse whenever they get the opportunity, it's amazing for the game, great for the game. And so when he does that, that's incredible.
Speaking of the Lacrosse Matrix podcast, any other celebrities that you have coming up that might be pumping lacrosse?
Well, first of all, Stamper, I do have to get you on as a guest, definitely in the coming weeks. I said
celebrities, though.
No celebrities, although I will say that I do have another
story. It's not for the podcast, it's for a story. You go.
That is for the story. In Tyler Johnston, who many Canadians may know as an actor in Letterkenny and many other shows. He and his father are season ticket holders to the Warriors, actually played in Coquitlam when he was much younger for the Adirondacks. Actually got coached for a little bit by Jake Elliott. And also for a brief moment was I think it was either coached or he was part of some kind of clinic. I'll have to go back in the interview where he even had some experience learning from Kurt Malosky. So, wow. He knows a lot of those guys. Matt Beers is a friend of his. He knew his sisters. So that article is going to come up very soon. It's great to, again, see celebrities and people who have a voice and can amplify the sport, them doing that.
I was trying to use my insider knowledge to pump your tires, and I pumped the wrong tire. Sorry about that, but it did lead to pumping the story coming up with Tyler Johnston. And we are going to wrap this segment. I think it was really good. It was Adam's idea, and I think it came off really well. I enjoyed that. We're going to come back and make our picks in what has become less and less appropriately called the Humiliate the Host segment, although I don't actually know how we did last week, so maybe it's back to being accurate. We'll be back on Inside the World of Box Lacrosse in about a minute with our picks. Welcome back, lacrosse friends, to Inside the World of Box Lacrosse. And we are at the Humiliate the Host section where we make our picks. And I was thoroughly unprepared for, oh, geez. I would say, I don't know how I did last week. I kind of forgot. I didn't do well. 2-5. Holy cow. Adam, you went 4-3. That makes it very close on the season. I'm one game ahead with a couple of weeks to go. That makes the pressure for this week's picks, which we're about to do, really high. I'm going to make you pick first because I need an edge here after last week. Vancouver or Toronto?
I think that, especially after that last section, Stamper, how could I not go with Vancouver? I mean, Toronto, great effort against Las Vegas, and I know that they're really trying to show their heart and their effort, but I think that Vancouver, they have so much to play for right now. I mean, for them to make a home playoff game, it would be their first home playoff game in 7 years. I mean, maybe 8 years, actually. I think it was 2017. That would be just a huge moment for them. Kurt Malosky really doing some great things with that club. So Vancouver for me.
And that home playoff game was a bit of an anomaly. They had a great year. Ty Belanger that year was in the running for goalie of the year. Matt Beers probably should have been the defender of the year. I think they had a transition player of the year candidate too. Justin Salt. They had that year. They were out, they went up around 500. Did get to host a playoff game, but for a few years before that, they hadn't even been in the playoffs at all either. Right. So that was it's been a while since Vancouver has had the kind of run that they've got going right now.
Yeah.
All of that said, and Christian Del Bianco playing the way he's playing, it's a hard pick because, as we've talked about, teams don't tend to win a whole ton of games in a row. Winning 4 in a row is not an everyday occurrence in the league. Do they go through and win 6 in a row heading into the playoffs? I don't know. I'm going to take Vancouver just because I didn't love how the Toronto-Las Vegas game was exciting, but I didn't love how Toronto didn't close it out. And I think, they've created a bunch of players. They're still good. They're still competitive. Shout out to Josh Dawick, leading the team in scoring. He's been dynamite, but I've got to go with Vancouver as well. But it makes me nervous.
Yeah.
Pick Vancouver, given that Toronto's still competitive and Vancouver's won so many in a row. But it works out okay that I picked the same game as you, so you can't catch me on that one anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. It's going to be interesting. I think I had tweeted it out, and I'm forgetting now if it included Kurt Malosky's time in Vancouver. But since moving to Vancouver in 2014, the team is 60-131, Stamper. The Vancouver Stealth / Warriors. That is a rough go. Also important to note that they did not win that home playoff game against Colorado. So they've never won a home playoff game since the team moved to Vancouver.
On the other side, we have a team that's trying so hard to get into their first playoffs as an expansion team that came in with Rochester, and the Nighthawks have clinched their 3rd straight playoff berth. Their expansion brethren, the Ottawa Black Bears, formerly New York Riptide, have got themselves in a position where they can still make the playoffs, but some struggles of late have made it tough for them. And they're playing a Vegas team that has been playing well. Adam Poitras came back and was sensational. I think he's right up there for Rookie of the Year conversation. He's not my guy, but I think he's right, and it's certainly in the top 3. So it's Las Vegas has a real chance here to get their 5th win, which would match what they've done in their first 2 seasons in the league. But at some point, Ottawa has to pull off one of these games that they have to have, right? So I'm going to take Ottawa in this one.
I hate to pick the same as you on this one, and I'm right there with wanting to pick the Desert Dogs.
I thought you were going to take Vegas. Honestly, I was nervous.
If I had a coin, I would be flipping a coin right now.
I've got one here. You want me to do it for you?
Yeah, let's do it, Stamper.
Who's heads, who's tails?
Heads will be the Desert Dogs, and tails will be the Black Bears.
Okay. It is heads. There you go.
Okay, so I'm the Desert Dogs.
There you go. Could be the one that ties you up.
Is that our first coin flip pick?
I think I did a coin flip earlier in the year.
I do remember that.
That was a Canadian quarter I used that time. This is an American quarter, so maybe it's favoring. Whoa, that's pretty cool. It's got a little of wheat. Anyway, maybe it's favoring Vegas because it's American. I don't know.
There you go. But yeah, it's this is going to be a great game. Both teams with so much fight. That game against Toronto for Las Vegas, I think, really just showed that Vegas, and I'm glad that this is the case because Coach Sean Williams told me on the Lacrosse Matrix podcast last week that this team was not going to stop fighting, and they proved it.
Yeah. San Diego and Albany, the first of a home and home in the final 2 weeks, and it's your turn to pick first.
So I think we're going to be different on this one. And yes, I am partly swayed because Nikki, Preston, and I will be in Albany for this game, the final home game for the Albany Firewolves. I am going to go with the Albany Firewolves on this one. I think in front of what is expected to be another great Albany crowd, final game of the season. I think that this team is going to pull off a win. We've seen them play better in the second half. Now, I know it's risky to say San Diego's been playing really well, and I imagine you might pick them, but I'm going to go Albany here.
It's interesting because I look at a few factors, and for the Firewolves, it doesn't look great when you see the 10-4 game against Vancouver. But like I said, Del Bianco was amazing. Chris Origlieri has not been playing nearly as well as Del Bianco of late. So Origlieri is good, but he hasn't been, I would say, at the top of his game. I think Alex Simmons is a big factor. In the first half of the game against Vancouver last week, he didn't look like himself. Right. You could see how hesitant he was with the knee. And then there were a couple plays in the second half where it's like, okay, he's coming back. And he didn't wind up scoring much. He had a goal late. I thought he was looking more like himself. I think another week and he's going to be back to being a bit of a difference maker, I would think. Now, do they play him knowing that they're now basically out of the playoffs? I mean, there's a slim sliver of hope. He's going to want to play for sure. Mm-hmm. And certainly it doesn't look like there's a long-term issue for him because as you tweeted during the show, multitasking, Alex Simmons is going to the Victoria Shamrocks from the Coburg Kodiaks in a interprovincial transfer for the summer. So he's obviously feeling good about the longer-term stuff. And I was all over. I was going to pick Albany, and then I found out you're going to the game, and they always lose when you're there, right? So I can't let that sway me. Maybe they turn that around. I am actually going to go with Albany.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it's a good thing that I picked Vegas then, so we've got some kind of
right
up there. But maybe this next pick we might be going different again. Not that I want to be upsetting Buffalo Bandits fans, but I really think that
but you're going to anyway.
I think I'm leaning that way. The Halifax Thunderbirds right now look so good. We just outlined Randy Stotts. Cody Jamieson has been a phenomenal leader for this team. I think that Warren Hill has a bounce back game, but does it even matter because Drew Hutchison has been playing so well? You've got transition defense. I mean, they're really doing it all right now. And Halifax really, really wants a home playoff game, and they can clinch that home playoff game by beating Buffalo. I think that Halifax is going to upset the Bandits. And I would also say for Buffalo, they have clinched now, if I'm correct, the number 1 seed. So they are, because of that, the Saskatchewan loss.
Saskatchewan losing? That's a good point.
And so, if you, on the spot, if you end up correcting me on that, but if that is true, does Buffalo play to the effort that they're expected to play most nights? I think that Halifax just has more to play for here, so I think that I'm going to go with Halifax.
Quick point: Buffalo is not clinched first overall. They're 12-4. They could finish 12-6, right? Saskatchewan's 11-5. They could be 13-5. Buffalo with the tiebreaker, of course, over Saskatchewan. So if they do wind up tied, so one more win would clinch first overall for Buffalo. So it's interesting because earlier in the season we were discussing, hey, does Buffalo lose a game this year? I think you were saying, yeah, they probably will. I was saying, yeah, they're going to lose a game. Now they're 3-3 in their last 6 games. Are they going to finish first overall? We don't even know. They will be hosting a playoff game. Will they be finishing first overall? Who knows? They don't have Chris Cloutier. Mm-hmm. At least he hasn't been added back to the roster yet after going out last week. Clay Scanlon played quite well for Buffalo. I think he's a nice fill-in for them on the left side. But I don't know. I mean, I'm I hate to do it because I'm honestly not trying to just pick the same teams as you because I'm one game ahead. I want to keep a game ahead. That's really kind of irrelevant. But I do feel like Halifax is on a roll, and I just see them going in and winning this game the way that they're playing.
Yeah. I mean, look, I think that this not only will, in my opinion, be the game of the week. I think this could go into the contender of game of the year, the way that both of these teams are playing. And I think that, there is something to be said about Buffalo, playing a little bit. Excuse me. Oh, excuse me again.
See, at least I had the sense to have my sneeze attack during the commercial break.
Yeah. And so, for me, I think that, Buffalo, there's such pride, not only on the roster, but from their fan base, that if they are down in a game that, I think that of all the teams that, we talked about their second halves and how strong they are. I mean, this is just going to be a phenomenal game.
Yeah, I think so. And it's interesting, you bring up Drew Hutchison as the backup goalie, how well he has played when he's had to step in. And I mentioned earlier in the game, I feel like Riley Hutchcraft is the top backup goalie in the league this year. He's played the most. He was starter for quite a while. He's got the best numbers. But Hutchison on a given day is right there with him. So again, even if Warren Hill struggles out of the gates, you've got Hutchison who can come in and deliver the performance you need. So to get a win. So we move on to the final game of week 20. We've got two more. Sorry, there's the Saturday game and then the Sunday. We have Georgia at Philadelphia. And again, the Wings played very well last week, or in a lot of phases, came back, got that big win. I think, though, it's hard to win a home and home, a back-to-back. And I think Georgia, you talked about their consistency not being there. So they had some struggles last week. I think they bring it this week and get the road win for the Swarm.
So I am going to differ with you on this one. I think that Philadelphia win was huge for them. I think that, and I will say, and, we'll see what happens over the next couple of years, but, the way that it seems like things are panning out for the Philadelphia Wings, I think that these guys, aside from feeling a lot of disappointment from the way that the season has gone, particularly at home recently, I think that the rumors surrounding the club and the future of the club in the next coming seasons and what's going to happen, these guys love each other. You can see how much they want to play for each other on the floor, and we saw that. We were talking about that early in the program. Yeah. I think that is extra motivation on top of the fact that they want to show that no way are they what their record says they are. And so I think that the Wings are going to finish out very strong. They're going to make sure that they win that final home game, and they are going to say to the fans, we are here. We're sorry that we disappointed you, but we are going to give everything that we have down the stretch.
Who's your starting goalie, Deacon Nod or Nick Damoud?
At this point of the season, why not give Deacon another go? What an effort, and I have to say to him, I sent him a text message, and I know that we all kind of believe this with Deacon, he's just been waiting in the wings, no pun intended, or pun very intended, to have those opportunities to start. And, Zach Higgins was there, then Nick Damoud, and he's always just so pleasant, so calm, so patient, so hardworking. Never is like, man, I hate this situation. He's just ready when the team needs him, and he proved that. And so very happy for him to have gotten that first career win this past week because, he works his butt off and really always has a smile pregame, during the game, it seems, and also postgame.
For sure. And I tell you, when he becomes a starter in the league, he will immediately be up there for one of the best passing goaltenders in the league. Boy, he can sling it.
And so this is interesting. I know it's a bit of a tangent, but we were talking about Las Vegas. Mm-hmm. Is there a way that Deacon ends up in Las Vegas?
That's, when we were talking about it earlier, and I actually thought about that. You mentioned, is Hutchcraft available? Can some of these guys? Yeah, would he go? It's interesting because you've got Deacon Knott, Justin Getty, and Landon Kells are all guys who played in the World Juniors, mm-hmm. Which is an independent and unsanctioned World Junior Championship run by the IIJL. But Landon Kells was fantastic. Actually, was on a team for a couple of years, I think, with Blaine Rushka as well. And Landon Kells actually came in a gold medal game against the Haudenosaunee when Canada got off to a bad start and Rushka was struggling a bit. Kells came in and shut the door and led Canada to a gold medal. Deacon Knott had a fantastic performance with a great Team Canada squad and made one of the, I mean, it was a highlight reel pass that he made. Just fantastic. He is such a good passer. Could he wind up at there? Justin Getty played for Israel in the tournament and did quite well. But yeah, I mean, again, it's another young guy who isn't established. He just got his first win. So Kels has more experience. But is that somebody you look at, Deacon Knott as a guy that they could look to add? And does that solve the problem? Like, is he more promising than Landon Kells? I don't know. They're three good young goalies. I think you'd like to get a veteran if you're Vegas, but again, who? Hutcraft, Hutchison.
Yeah, I mean, there's some great picks, but I love every time I've seen Deacon play, and this goes back to junior, helping Burlington win that Minto Cup. I mean, his athleticism. I mean, he really looks very similar. You talked about his passing like a Christian Del Bianco, and let's not forget, only 22 years old. This kid. He really can. If you believe in him, he can be the cornerstone potentially with his potential in this league. I think he's you talked about goalies are hard to come by in this league. It would be interesting. It's just another one of those questions. So,
and what does Vegas have to trade for him? I mean, they've given up a lot of picks. So how would they get him? I would imagine Kelser Getty would have to go the other way. So, you wouldn't have the triumvirate probably. But yeah, it's an interesting one. Certainly worth considering. If you're Sean Williams, Deacon Knott, a native of Curve Lake, just literally like 7 or 8 minutes down the road from where I lived in Buckhorn, Ontario for a couple of years, and obviously just outside of Peterborough. So he is, and he is with the Lakers, but I think he was the MVP of the Ontario Senior B League last year with the Brooklyn Merchants. And he is going to be playing with Brooklyn. I think he'll be playing with the Lakers as well, but certainly Brooklyn is the host of the President's Cup Senior B Championship this year. He is fired up about being part of that run.
Yeah, it's gonna be great. I can't wait to see what he can do this summer. So moving on to that final game of the
week. You think we've had enough of a tangent?
Stamper, when we get on a tangent, I don't think there's ever enough.
Yeah.
It's great to see another Sunday matchup. We've had back-to-back overtime Sunday matchups, which is just awesome. Great way to end the week. In this one, Stamper, shall I go first between Colorado and Saskatchewan? Yes. I am going to go with the Saskatchewan Rush, plain and simple here. Colorado, we've talked about it. You mentioned it earlier that they've just got so many injuries. They're in a position where I think that, yes, they really want to make sure that they get into the playoffs, but Saskatchewan, still fighting, as you mentioned, because we don't know what's going to happen in Halifax for that number 1 seed. So I think that is going to be very interesting down the stretch here. But Saskatchewan is going to want to bounce back after that second half there against Calgary. So I'm going to go with Saskatchewan.
I often feel like the team that has more to play for is the team to go with in a situation like this. And that would be Colorado, I guess, because they are, fighting for their playoff lives, but they're kind of limping down the stretch a bit. But Saskatchewan, this means a lot to them as well. Again, there's still a chance for first overall, not in their own hands because Buffalo can clinch it by winning out. They are hosting a playoff game, but they want to be second and not third, because if you're second, you also host in the semifinals for sure. Right? If you get there. So that would be important for them as well. And I think this does mean a lot to them. Again, they've had a really good season, but not so much lately, being 3-3 in their last 6 games. And I think it really means a lot to Saskatchewan to go into the playoffs on a positive momentum swing. I think they really want to win their last couple of games and feel like they're ready to go. Interesting note, this is go to my musings again on IL Indoor this week, but Saskatchewan, they clinched a home playoff berth. They do not have a player in the top 25 in the league in scoring. They've been doing it with defense, goaltending, transition, and enough offense to get by. I take Saskatchewan, by the way.
Okay.
Sorry, I forgot that part.
Again, could be a good one, but yeah, I think Saskatchewan pulls that out. So looking at it here, Stamper. So we've got two that were different. So I could be ahead in the
Good.
standings at the end of the weekend. Let us hope that coin flip pays off for me. I know that you are thinking the opposite,
How
but
did my coin flip work out? I don't remember.
that's it. We'll have to go back in the
Go
film.
through
That is
the
a good
archives.
question.
Charity, could you go through the archives of every episode this season and find when I used a coin flip and how it worked out for me in all your spare time with raising your kids and your dogs and taking over for Greg every time he has to go get a haircut once a year? That would be great.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, well, that is going to do it for this episode of Inside the World of Box Lacrosse. Thank you for joining us for this one. And thank you so much to Charity Beecher, as Stamper just said, for taking over for Greg in this one. It was awesome doing this with you guys, as it always is every week. Stephen Stamp, Adam Levy, Charity Beecher, Greg Beecher will be back next week. It was awesome,
It'll be
folks.
fine.
Enjoy the jam-packed week of NLL action.